And here he is, Maurice Robinson, the star bass. And in the background, I see a place I recognize very well. It's the Citadel in Charleston. Are you in Charleston?
No, I'm not in Charleston. I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia. Although I'd love to be in Charleston. I'm sure the weather is really great there right now, and there's a beach. But no, I'm here in Atlanta at my home.
Okay. So I'm so much looking forward to talking to you. We have been working together now for many years. I have the greatest admiration for your art, and you're such a stunning colleague. I want to talk about your career. I want to talk about COVID, but I think it would be wrong not to talk about the situation in the country right now after what can only call the murder of Floyd. How are things in Atlanta first?
You know, I live out in the country, so I'm in Tyrone, Georgia. So I'm about 25 miles south of the city. But yesterday, my sister had her 50th birthday, and my son and I went into the city to go to her party. And we saw about 9 Humvees run right by us with 4 military buses, which I'm assuming was there to help police the situation and clear out people that were doing things that should not be done. I'll just say this. I firmly understand the frustration and the outrage about what happened. You know, in this country, we have seen a series of events that have taken place that are very similar in action. And it doesn't seem like a lot of things have been done to support and eradicate that. And it's a shame that we had to see one more thing happen just like that. Hopefully, this will be what sparks the change. I hate that the young man lost his life, but I'm glad that everybody got to see it again, and that we hopefully will make the right actions and move in the right direction to get away from that. Do I support the destruction of property? Absolutely not. I think that it's an unfortunate byproduct of the frustration that is happening. So while I understand logically and emotionally how people are frustrated and want to do things, I think that's the wrong thing to do. You know, but one way to eradicate these types of occurrences, these types of reactions, is to eradicate the problem in the first place. So I hope that we as a country, the government, police in general across the country, revamp their system, realign things such that they can weed out the bad apples and we don't have to ever live through this again. So, yeah. Right,
amen to that. I would say eradicating racism is probably not going to happen in one night. Yeah. But I agree that something is changing a little, in the sense that the way to fight this disease or this madness is to have conversations. Yeah. And I'm European, as you know, but I've lived in this country for such a long time. I'm half time in Europe, half time in the States. So I might have a slightly different approach to this. But in the past, I think what is happening is that people didn't want to have those conversations because they are very uncomfortable. And yes, in order to be authentic and honest in this conversation, you also need to risk to say something that maybe is a little off. Because, yes, you know, this really needs to be from people to people. I think the thing that's changing, and I see this a lot among my white friends, is that people cannot say anymore, oh, this is a problem that's going to be solved, but they need to understand that it is their problem too. So yeah, that means racism is my problem, even if I'm not racist myself, or I don't think I'm racist. Right. And I think that's something that's very new. I would even say not talking about it on your social media, not addressing this in public forum, is in a way, that passivity is in itself a certain act of endorsement of a part of racism. And I know it's a very strong statement, but you cannot stay there having someone killed in front of you. At one point, you are the assistant to that murder. Yes. And it's very hard, because racism has been in this culture for such a long time, and probably part of the way this country was built, yes, had to do with the oppression of certain people of color. And I do believe that the arts do have a role to play with this, a very important role to play, which is difficult for us in the sense that my political opinion, Republican, Democrat, anything, they should not matter as a music director or artistic director or general director. I am not here to impose my political views, but art, culture, and opera house has a role to play in the community to initiate conversation, to create links, to reach out to other places of the city that might think it's not our place, and install this. So that is not political, but that is in a very large sense being part of the intellectual, cultural, social life of a society. And if you don't do this, I think you're not doing your job. To walk that line is very, very difficult. How do you feel with this big question of social involvement or political involvement or activism as a singer, and particularly as an African-American singer, and do you recognize that the way I just said it, African-American singer?
No, I think that you're spot on. First of all, yes, African-American is the appropriate thing to say. Walking back to some of the things that you said before, to sit by idly and not say anything does resound as complicit behavior. And it would be no different than the people that stood by, the cops that stood by and allowed this to happen without getting involved, for us to do so. And I don't mean just us as an arts organization. We'll start, the bigger picture is for anyone at all to not recognize this and speak out is showing complicity. And as an art organization, if we're going to participate in this country and be part of the country and be part of the fabric of our country and be part of the fabric of the cities in which we reside, and we want to service a wide variety of people, of cultures, we have to make sure that we are aligned with the appropriate things and saying the right things to make sure that we don't ostracize anybody else from feeling like they belong to us and we belong to them. So it is the right thing to do as an organization. I, as an artist individually, have taken the road to be outspoken about these things. I think that the fear in the companies, art companies as well, you run as you said, it's a very tight line because a lot of people that support the arts world have different views. And the arts world, you know, the arts world is the microcosm of the big world, you know, so you have some people that do this, some people that do that, and that happens in the art world as well. As you said, this country was founded, if you will, upon the backs of certain minorities and taken away from others. And that's just kind of the fabric of America. And until we recognize that as a whole and say, you know what, we have some mistakes in our past and we need to atone for those, we won't be able to move forward. So yes, the conversations needs to be sparked, and we as arts organizations and artists individually need to be part of that conversation because we participate in this country and we feed this country, and we, in order to speak correctly to the people in which we serve, we have to understand from whence they come. So I think it's very important that we're involved and we speak out about these things, certainly.
Right, and you have been an incredible advocate, and we will get to the connection with the art in itself and the career in itself, because I'm certain this is extremely complex. I can't help seeing the Citadel and Charleston behind you, and I think we talked about this earlier. I was music director of Spoleto USA for many years, and I've been associated to this amazing festival for many years. But one of the things I tried to do with my general director was to, in that incredible city which is so charged historically, darkly charged historically, is to address those issues. Yes. In a way, you know, we think art is, and opera is entertainment, and yes, it is. We think, some people think that, you know, the most important thing in life is to feed people. I agree. But we also need to feed the souls. We need to nourish the minds and work with this. And I decided with the general director then to do a new version of the opera of Anthony Davis, Amistad. And this opera, Anthony Davis is an African American composer, fantastic. There is something a little border of jazz and very avant-garde classical music in his writing, but absolutely beautiful, beautiful piece. The topic is, of course, very, very, very dark and very powerful. And it's those slaves on the ship who all of a sudden took over the ship because of the incredible abuse. And then there was a trial, and in the end, they get acquitted. And the opera is addressing all those issues in a really wonderful way. We decided to program that opera in its new chamber version in a theater that was used at the time as a gymnasium for the school. And that school was just at the border between the very posh old mansion Charleston houses, which had their quarters in the back, which used to be the slave quarter, and a project with challenged socially people who were mainly people of color. And that theater was just at the middle of the two. Wow. And we had on purpose organized pre-performances, pre-shows where people of both neighborhoods would meet together in the theater.
Wow.
That wow is the word. And those rehearsals were very heavy because mostly African-American cast. And also some of the characters being, of course, white characters. It brought such heaviness, tension, darkness in the rehearsal process that we had at one point to even stop rehearsals and start talking about it. But in a way, that was the most beautiful thing. And it was a stunning piece. And we had a ship in the middle of the theater, and the seats were around that ship, all around, because we were renovating the theater. So, and it really changed through art. It changed the life in that neighborhood. It kind of had slowly shift some of the mentalities. It created a space that was a safe space for a conversation and for interaction, literally, physically, in the city. But it was tough. It was heavy. I must say, we didn't encounter any resistance to it from anybody. And I do think that the festival in Charleston has done amazing things in the city to create a little more of a connection between the community. Several things with this, because I really want to go back to the way you feel about those issues. One issue that's very touchy is the so-called colorblind casting. So for the people who don't know this, it's this idea that, which comes from very good principle, that on the stage, at least in opera, mostly in theater, it should not matter what the skin of the performer is. And, you can be Filippo II, you can be any major king of the medieval Western world, because you are who you are. And I have been very strong in this. That has created somehow disconnect a little, in the sense that this notion of colorblind casting has been used sometimes to say, well, we don't need an Asian butterfly. We don't need an African-American Ramses. And this has been used the other way. In Amistad, it was obvious for an historical piece like this that the cast needed to be African-American for the African-American roles and white for the right roles. What is your, this is a very personal question, but I want to go to the heart of those matters. What is your position on so-called colorblind casting and all the resonance of it?
Well, in a perfect world, I think that if I were to run an opera company, the best voices for the roles would get the jobs. And that's whatever blends better together, whatever works well together, they get the jobs. Now, when you get into specific things like, for instance, Amistad, for instance, which is actually a true historical piece written about real people, then I think you have to be a little bit more sensitive to the fact that this was written about an African-American or a slave on a ship and that was brought to America. And you would want that to be, it would be very tough to sell that idea if you had a Caucasian person playing that role. So I think you have to be smart about it as artists, as casting, and say, okay, for this type of thing, we really need to stick to exactly what is written. You know, Madame Butterfly is an Asian lady, and with makeup, you can make a white person look that way, and it's not a real historical thing. This is a fictional story. But when you're talking about, you know, those types of stories that are truly historical, I think it's very important that you try to stick to it, because you're trying to tell a story, and those stories have meaning and they have a place in our society. So I agree with that 100%.
And race is the very topic of the opera there. So you cannot mess this. You cannot fog this.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you know, if that were the case, then everybody in Aida would be dark complected, right? Right. Because
correct.
It took place in Ethiopia and Egypt. So, but that's not a historical story. That is all fiction, you know, and therefore I think you also have to have imagination when you're talking about fictional things and say, okay, for instance, magic flute. Well, I mean, how real is that, you know? So if we're going to believe that the flute is magical and you can play it and affect things, and we can believe that the Zoroaster can be black, you know? So I think that those are the types of things you have to take in consideration. But I think the more that, you know, you do what you did in Charleston and what we're doing in other places and what you guys are doing, the more that you have this community involvement, you know, you stop ostracizing that which you don't normally enjoy. I think that African Americans, for the most part, you know, a lot of people don't feel invited to the opera. A lot of people don't feel comfortable being there. And having these conversations in a relaxed rehearsal environment brings people in and makes them comfortable. I think we also have to do a lot of audience training, and that our traditional audiences need to understand that, you know, we're reaching out and bringing people that aren't normally coming to the opera into the opera. We need to be accepting of them. So I think all of this community involvement, all these things are very important, you know.
Right, and when we say as general directors, we want people of color to come to the house, we also need to offer to the people of color or minorities on stage people that look like they look alike, you know. I mean, it's so, and ideally it should not be an issue anymore, but to say, oh, I have principle and it's not an issue is actually totally hypocrite too, you know.
Yeah.
So you need to find that balance.
I think that people come out and support that which they are familiar with and they feel more comfortable doing so. It would be very difficult for me to bring a brother I met at the barbershop in South Dallas, which I've done, to the Opera House. If I weren't on stage, he'd be there thinking, okay, I'm not only the only white person.
I don't belong.
There's nobody. But when I'm there, you know, he's like, oh, that's my boy on stage. He's actually singing in Italian. This is really cool. And so he brings other people. So, and that actually, this is a true story. It actually happened in Dallas. I've had people that I've met in the community that don't normally frequent the opera come to the opera because I'm on stage there. And I think that's important. So, and the more we think about those things and head in that direction with diversity and inclusion, we'll see the opera business have more of a voice and be more accepted to a variety of people. And that's what we really need right now, because the opera audiences aren't growing and they aren't getting any younger. So we have to start thinking of creative ways to include everyone, you know, not just for survival, but because it's the right thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. When we did Showboat, though, that was a little more even complicated, because Showboat was written as a piece that was denouncing racism. I mean, we have no doubt about this. But the way it is depicted from the beginning of the 20th century, it's carrying stereotypes that are very offensive to some people, and language that can be offensive to people. And in a movie, somehow you understand it's a frame, it's a depiction of the bad guys. In an opera, it's even more difficult. How do you, because you have been so famous for singing Showboat all over the world. I think you sang it even at Scala, or you sang Porgy at the Scala. How do you feel about Showboat in general?
So I love, okay, Showboat and Porgy kind of fit in the same category for me. Showboat only had 2 black characters in it, though. Everything else is white. Right. But in general, I feel as though I don't absolutely enjoy bringing people from my society and my culture to see those shows, because all that does is perpetuate in their mind images that we have tried to pull ourselves away from for years. Now, historically, yes, Showboat, Porgy, these shows have been very, very important in the African American community, because that's something that we've only been able to sing at one point. When we weren't singing King Filippo, when we weren't singing Zoroaster, when we weren't singing Granfis, when we weren't singing Madame Butterfly, we were able to sing Porgy. And that has put a lot of Black people through college. It has supported a lot of Black families that are the product of artists So it has its place. I think that, however, the search for something to replace those things, something to also say that this is ours and we can be proud of this. You know, I made a mention before that we have to find something that does to the opera world what Black Panther did to the movie world. And that is, you know, where we actually own the technology and we were the superheroes and we were the smart people and we did have the weaponry, you know, when we were the kings and the queens and we were proud people. I think that we also have to start looking for pieces that depict that, lest we steer away people that could potentially be in our audience base that won't patronize, because I'm so tired of seeing Black folks shuck and jive on stage. So I did your production of Showboat, actually, and you conducted that. I think that's the first thing we did together.
It was fun.
And I think it was wonderful. I think that one of the problems I had with the Showboat, especially in the South, like when we did in Chicago and San Francisco, people loved it. You know, when in the South, you know, I'm singing Old Man River, which is like the Nessun Dorma to Turandot. And I know that people are expecting this, you know, this big Black guy to sing Old Man River, which I think exceptionally well. But it's a song of protest. It's not the good old happy song that a lot of Southern whites thought it was. So when I'm angry and I'm singing it, I think the response was like, okay, because it came across like, oh my God, he's actually angry, and it made them think about the words and think about the personification of this character, which I thought was also a very a good thing, because we're not just listening to the music and thinking, oh, Black people singing Old Man River, we're happy. We're thinking, wow, he's really talking about something really deep here. And that's the impact of art. That's the impact of art, and I think that's the impact we should have on audience spaces. So yeah. But I would sing Showboat and I would sing Porgy again, of course.
Right. And I think Showboat is even more controversial in some ways because of the language and some of the stereotypes, you know. Yeah. But the way we did it in Charleston, in Dallas, if you remember, I think we thought there needs to be a conversation also around the opera and the performances. And we had Black Dance Theater who was performing in Showboat, which was absolutely extraordinary. And we had a joint board meeting with our board and the board of Black Dance Theater in their offices. And I think that was just something awesome. We had conversation in the university around, and you were part of that. And that was terrific.
Great, that was a great idea, yeah.
Do you feel that question of being a singer of color somehow, has that been affecting you differently in Europe and in the States?
You know, traditionally, I think it has, you know, whereas African Americans early on could not establish themselves in careers in the United States for obvious reasons, European companies were much more accepting, much more, they weren't affected as much as we are with this whole race thing. And also the people that control the theaters in America, lots of people that had a lot of money actually came from a different mindset in our history. So I think when you control those things, you get to have a lot of say in who goes on stage. So Europe has always been a nice refuge for the African American artists. You know, I'm of a generation, and I'm not saying that I'm the norm. I'm the exception. I'm very blessed that, first of all, I'm a bass, so I don't have to be seen as a lead character with a white female on stage. Sure. Secondly, I'm in this era where I've been fortunate enough to be accepted by American companies and perform here. And that's not the norm. That is the new exception to the rule. But I see that that's happening more and more as we have more open-minded people in the roles of casting and directing. So we're headed in the right direction, I believe. We're not there yet, but I think we are headed in the right direction.
I think we are in the right direction. I also think that what you say about Europe having been more inclusive for African-American singers, for instance, is true. That doesn't mean Europe doesn't have its racism issues, you know, and they just express themselves differently. I mean, I live in Paris, and there is a lot of racism in Paris too, unfortunately. Let's move on a little. I mean, what's happening right now, it's difficult to say, let's move on, but I want to talk about you and your career. How did you leave the COVID tragedy or mess or joke or whatever it is? Where were you? I think you were in Dallas when that happened.
Oh my God, when COVID hit, yeah. So I had just finished my last performance of Porgy here in Atlanta, and I needed to be in Dallas to start rehearsing my first King Filippo. And I left my show here and flew to Dallas the very next morning. And I think I got a call from your casting director, David Lomeli, and says, "Hey, Morris, don't come to rehearsal tonight." Okay, fine. I just got in anyway. This will be great. I'll get to put my apartment together, which is something I never do. I unpacked all my clothes, hung up everything, went to the grocery store. I was all set to go to rehearsal the next day. Then I got a call that says, "Hey, don't come to rehearsal tomorrow either. I think we're going to be closed until Monday." I'm like, okay, this thing is getting serious. And I started looking out the window of the streets of Dallas and saw that people weren't out there. And then I got a call like on the third day that said, "We're going to cancel the show." And I was like, wow. So I ended up hopping on the airplane and flying back home. And I haven't had work since. It really hit fast, and the arts community has suffered greatly because, you know, we perform in venues that require lots of people to be together. We perform in a situation that requires orchestra members to be in a pit together. We, you know, there's lots of airflow. There's lots of exchanging of germs and that type of thing. So it has really put a stop to our ability to perform. And I think that we did the right thing, but it's certainly unprecedented territory for all of us as artists, as a country, as a nation, as a world. But certainly in our profession, it's very difficult. And I have no idea when this is going to turn around. So yeah, I'm very greatly affected by it. Yes.
Yes, it is difficult. And I think, I mean, for the people listening, I'm the music director of the opera, and I was conducting that Don Carlo that we never did. And I think we called it right and early. And I think addressing this early is, we all want to reopen theater. We all want the economy to start again. We just want it to start at the right moment, so it doesn't have to shut down again. That's the basis. And we want to protect, it's not only about me and you, it's protecting the people who are more vulnerable around us. The impact on the economy and the finances of the arts is tremendous. And companies are being hurt. Artists who live from paycheck to paycheck are in a very difficult position. And as we have talked about often with your colleagues, the difficulty, if it goes on for several months, is that the people who don't have the financial means to just weather a few months without income will have to take a second job, because the theater will be the last one to open, even after restaurants and stadiums. And once the business restarts, these people won't be necessarily ready. And so there might be a big chunk of our colleagues who will have lost momentum. Yes.
I would love to say this, however, Dallas Opera stepped up to the plate, and they did the right thing for their artists, and we appreciate that. You didn't have to. There are lots of companies that aren't following your example, but you guys made this transition, although abrupt and very severe, you made it a lot more amenable and affordable for artists like myself who had to come in and completely cancel a show. You guys paid your artists, and you paid them a nice percentage of what they would have gotten, and that honestly has helped us maintain our level of our livelihood and our living and take care of our families, et cetera. So for that, I applaud the Dallas Opera for being one of the forefronts to do that and one of the first to make that move. So we really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Maurice. I really think it was the right thing to do, and we thought a lot about this. You know, I was treated the same way. I mean, so I lost a part of my income there. I also a lot of people in the staff have agreed to a pay cut. I took a 25% pay cut. So did Ian there, our general director. And I think it's the right thing to do. You need to pay your artists. I mean, they are part of what we do. It's about relationships. We need you, you need us, you know. And at one point, this will have to be reevaluated if the situation gets worse. I mean, we're not going to be able to pay everybody all the time, but I think that's the same with a lot of companies, and we don't know what's going to happen in the fall in the US. Europe is restarting in some places. I think the US is going to be more difficult in the sense that you cannot sustain an art organization, at least an orchestra and an opera company, if you have your audience at 25% capacity, for instance. Doesn't work financially. No. And also most of the funding is private funding, cooperation of people, and in the stock market is somehow affected, or people are just being careful. They don't give the way they give. So we really don't know where we are going with all of this, and it is in many ways extremely scary. We are very present online because that's where we can be, but you cannot do Lulu and Showboat online. That doesn't make any sense.
And you can't sell 3,000 tickets either. So.
Yes, exactly. And the performance is about all that could happen in the place with the people, with that kind of breathing together and communicating together. And a lot of the things we are doing online are new things, and they are reaching to different people, and that is fantastic. And that will continue once we restart. I just pray for this situation to get better. Yeah. And it's very hard to be patient, because you could say, okay, I'm patient for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. You would know, you could organize yourself. I've been wishing, and it's the same for you. You're such a busy artist, for downtime. I'm working too much. I need a sabbatical. And here it's imposed on us, and we're panicking. We can't even enjoy it. And that is terrible. So I still see that citadel behind you. And so I understand. I want to, this is a question I've asking to all your colleagues. What was your first connection to music? And when did you understand you had a voice? And when did you decide I'm going to make this my career?
Wow. Well,
yeah, I know.
My introduction to music was, I'm a Black guy from the South. So our first introduction to music is always the church, singing the gospel choir. My mother was in the gospel choir. My dad was in the gospel choir. Then my dad became a Baptist minister. So, in South, it's kind of a prerequisite. If you're going to be a preacher, you got to be able to sing. So I grew up with that kind of music around me. And my first song was, I was about 6 years old singing in the gospel choir. I got the solo. I was so little, they had to stand me in the chair so I could be seen over the pews. But, I never wanted to really be a singer. I wanted to be the drummer. Like, the drummer was a cool thing. So I grew up playing the drums in church. And it wasn't until I got to high school. I didn't do chorus in elementary school or middle school. It wasn't until I got to high school. I went to high school performing arts. And I auditioned for the band. I was playing baritone horn. And I got into the band. And then I got to the first football game and realized I don't want to be in the band. I want to be on the football field. So the only way I could stay at that school was to audition for the chorus. My mother made me audition for the chorus so I could stay at that school. So I went in and sang, I think it was Impossible Dream, because I'd learned that from a show that I'd done with a musical here. And the music director played for me and said, hey, what are you doing in the band? I need you over here. So I joined the chorus. And it was pretty cool. My sophomore year, we did, my junior year, we did the Mozart Requiem and auditioned for the bass solos, and and I got the solos for all of that. And then my senior year, we did the Robert Shaw edition of the Heightened Creation. I got all the bass solos for that. So by that time, I was making my name on the football field, but I was also being sought after as this bass voice coming out of high school. So CCM heard me, Eastman heard me. They all offered me full rides. But I decided to take a football scholarship to this place right behind me here at Citadel. And while at the Citadel, I also conducted and played for the gospel choir. We have no musical talent there at all. So for me to be the best pianist on campus tells you how bad the musical. But I was on the football team. I made first team Kodak All-American my senior year, first team Sport Network All-American, second team Sport News All-American, first team All-Southern Conference. I was a pretty good football player in college, but I also sang the national anthem at, sporting events, and I sang Oh Holy Night for the Christmas Candlelight Service. And people always heard my voice and said, you have a future in this, you should really do it. But, the type of voice I have, there was nothing I was knowledgeable of that would allow me to have a career. I'm not familiar with symphonic work other than having done it in high school. I'd never been to the opera. The closest thing to opera I did was Among the Night Visitors when I was in high school. So I just didn't know what to do with this voice. And it was at the age of 30 that I auditioned for the New England Conservatory, who had a program that was a weekend program in the summer where it was called continuing education. So I went in on the women just sing the national anthem for them. Oh, say, can you see? In that voice. And they were like, so I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. So they put me in a musical, and that's where Sharon Daniels from Boston University heard me for the first time. And she says, she walked up to me. I was in a musical called Satanella, singing the role of the devil in Michael Bau's Satanella. And my first lines were, what daring mortal has defied my name? And I did it from the back of the house. And every time I opened my mouth, people go, I was like, maybe I'm onto something. So Sharon Davis walked up to me and basically said, I can change your life. If you want to study opera, I think I can get you in my school with a full scholarship. And I had no idea what I was doing, but she recommended a teacher who taught me 5 arias. I studied with him all winter, went and auditioned for her in the summertime, and they offered me a full scholarship. And I quit my job, turned in my company car. I started working at Best Buy in the mornings and going to school in the afternoon. And that was my life. You know, I was just learning opera from the ground up. I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning how to pronounce syllables, learning phrasing, learning everything by rote. And I auditioned for the chorus of Boston Lyric Opera, as all the people at BU do. And Steven Steiner, the chorus director, heard my audition and said, hey, take this music home. I want you to learn this and come back and sing it next week. And that was for The King and Aida. And I went back and sang for Stephen Lord. And he offered me the role of The King and Aida. So it was like about 3 weeks after I started studying opera, I'm singing The King and Aida at Boston Lyric Opera. So it was one of those things where you're learning. It's like drinking water out of a fire hydrant. There's so much information coming to you, and I'm trying to learn it and process it and sing at the same time. And, you know, just lots of hard work, lots of dedication. And, you know, I found myself doing it as a career. So,
but that is amazing, because somehow you had that interest in music, correct?
Yes.
In singing. Yes. In the chorus was not maybe the most important. So when you perform, there is such, and I think like all great performance, there is such a love for what you do. There is such a passion and such a commitment. How did you get that personal connection to singing in itself when it was, you know, it started only at 30? So
yeah.
How did you click with your inner artistic soul and put it in the voice?
Well, I'm naturally a musician. I've always played instruments growing up. Like I said, I played the drums in church. I could play a little bit of piano. Music is my first love. Sports is my second love. So I've always felt that, you know, music was where I needed to be. I just didn't know how to get there. And then I got a chance to get there, right? So, but I'm in a field where it's uber competitive, and I didn't have the degrees or the nomenclature or the pedigree to be here. So I worked really, 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 really hard at everything to make sure that I'm living up to the standards that I hear in front of me. I didn't know what I was listening to a lot of times, but I could tell what a legato line was. I didn't know what's called legato. I could tell that this phrasing was beautiful. I could tell that the breath control was beautiful. I could see where the composer was trying. I can tell what the composer is trying to do instinctually, and understand how the musical line or the vocal line goes with that. And I wanted to be a part of that, because I risked my whole life. I gave up everything that I know to do this. So part of the commitment is focus and wanting to be great and wanting to belong. The other part is just how I feel. So a lot of times I bring a lot of innate musicality to the show, to the roles. And sometimes, you know, you have to tell me, hey, Morris, you know, that was a little too riffy, or that, you know, I want you to sing it more this way. But it comes from here. And I think that's the most important thing. Authenticity translates to the audience. And if you're authentic with what you do, people get that. And I think that's the most important part of it.
Right. And very often, you know, we have something that's so natural that needs to come out of our pore and out of our soul directly. And then you need to get educated, trained, able to analyze it. But in the end, when the training is there, you forget the training and you go back to that instinct. Exactly. Yes. And that's where you really are a master of your art. You have a chance to being a bass that the voice gets better with age and mature. And you can sing, you know, well, I worked with Jerome Hines when he was in his late, yes, I know that's how old I am. We did Faust together in Auckland. Yes.
Wow.
He was a character, a great man. And I mean, I'm just saying this. He was very, very, very. I mean, I think he was in his 70s. He must have been.
Wow.
And he sounded terrific. What are the roles you want to do now, and how do you see the evolution of your voice?
Mm-hmm. So I started out, like I said, without a lot of knowledge of things, but I was able to make some really great sounds. Mm-hmm. So it was easy to plug me in park and bark roles. You know, this guy has this authoritative sound. We can let him sing Commendatore. We can let him sing Il Re, but not Rumpus yet. We can let him sing these things, you know, The Bunch and Butterfly. And as I learned more about the roles, as I learned more about the art, as I lived longer and got more life experiences, I was able to incorporate my life into what I do. So stepping out in roles like Zaccaria, for instance, in Nabucco, which is like the creme de la creme of the bass operatic literature in Italian, I was able to, okay, so I've never been a high priest that was trying to gather people together and tell them to fight this war, right? But I've been on the 50-yard line, and I've had to get my teammate together and say, hey, we're about to go out here and fight. And I need every last one of you guys with me. Let's go do this. So take that, transfer it over to the opera field, and it comes across as authentic. Like, you were really a leader on stage. You could tell the chorus is right behind you. Yeah, because I've been here before. I've done this before. And, you know, one of the things when I sang my first Porgy, for instance, you know, I've lived a lot. I understand what it's like to be heartbroken. I understand what it's like to be vulnerable. I understand what it's like to be bullied. You know, I understand what it's like to fight back and overcome these things. So I was able to incorporate that into that role. And one of the things I was looking forward to with King Filippo is that because I have so many life experiences and I know how to emote on stage, I don't now have to just impress people with the sound and the size of my voice. I'm able to explore colors and explore different nuances and explore sotto voce here and more voice here. So I was really looking forward to proving to the entire world that I could do this as well. And that's another part of my artistry, is that I carry a chip on my shoulder because I don't think a lot of people believed early on that I deserved to be where I was. And I find myself always, even at this age, over-coaching, over-preparing, always trying to be on top of my game to prove that my spot is well-deserved and I deserve to be here. So all that stuff comes into play when I'm trying to be, you know, present my best artistic form. And that's what makes me me. So, yeah.
Right. But Maurice, I mean, I can tell you this, there is a great respect for you as an artist in the business. And I think we all have chips on our shoulders, and we are all as good as our last performance. And we have all inside of us voices that tell us you don't deserve to be here and so on. And your history is quite spectacular. But if you look at all our colleagues, there is always something weird about their career and the way we have to struggle and defend ourselves, you know. And I think the fact you had to fight to get there makes you appreciate the value of where you are. And that's true, you know, in many aspects of my career too. My question was also, like, what do you see in the future as roles for you, you know?
So, yeah, you know, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I hope I'll get a chance to see my first Filippo again.
You will.
I'm looking forward to that. You know, that's one of the roles I've always looked forward to. Gurneman's is something I've thought about. I want to do.
Yes.
You know, Boris Godunov, I thought, okay, I should be doing this. But, you know, you also have, there's a business side of things too. Do I really want to learn all this Russian and get a chance to do it once or twice, where there are, you know, 450 Russian bases that do it without an accent, you know? So those types of things come to mind. I have not gotten into Wagner as much as some would like for me to do.
Well,
you know,
you have not done Dahlend? You have not done Dahlend yet?
This is about the 5th time on this break that I've heard that Dahlend should be in my repertoire.
Dahlend.
I think that I would do that. I think that I enjoy singing
Pogner, you know, Maestro singer. You should do Pogner. You should do, I mean, Klingsor. I'm sure that you have been offered Klingsor quite often already, no?
No, but Pogner was something I would love to do. That was one of the first roles I heard Renee Papa do when I was a young artist, and I was like, who's that dude? Okay, I want to sing that. So, you know, those types of things that express more than just the park and bark and the beautiful voice, that are introspective, that are very musical. I love to do those things. And more so, I enjoy singing the roles that I sing. I just want to sing them at certain places too, you know? So I'm checking those things off the list. So right now is, you know, I had my Filippo with you guys. Hopefully we can revisit that. I'd love to sing that role everywhere. You know, Zachary and Nabucco, I'm finally singing that at the Metropolitan Opera next season. I want to sing that role everywhere, you know. Those types of things. It's not just what I want to sing, but where I want to sing too. So.
Yeah. And what about in the French repertoire? What have you done? Have you done Faust?
I've not, and everyone keeps thinking I should sing Mephistopheles. I just don't, you know, I'm a big, huge black guy. I'm not the most romantic, slick, you know, devil, right. But that's
well,
something
the devil can be romantic. Actually, it can be, and you can be romantic too. Come on.
I was in Porgy, and I will be in Don Carlos, so let's just see, you know. But yeah, Faust, you know, I love the music. I think I could sing the heck out of it, but I tell you what, before I do it, I come and see you and make sure my French was good.
Yeah, we'll have fun. We'll have fun with it. Yeah. Do you? The teacher you had? Did you base your technique mostly on an Italian technique, or do you change the way you sing according to? If you sing in English, for instance, is it easier for you, or is it more difficult when you sing in English? Yeah.
English is way more difficult to sing in than any other language for me, because, you know, I'm from here, I speak this language, I'm from the South, so there are certain diphthongs and vowel placement issues that you have when you're singing. So when I'm singing in English, and I always tell people this, if you're gonna hire me for an English role, for instance, Porgy, realize that I'm gonna sing it just like I sing Zoroaster or I sing Romford. So I'm gonna use the same technique, the same vowel formation. You know, I'm gonna try to make it as comprehensible audibly as possible, but I'm going to stick to the vocal technique that I've mastered over these years. So, yeah, I try my best to make sure my technique is consistent across the board. And that is whether I'm singing in English or French or German or Italian or Russian. I try to make sure it's the same thing, because that's my instrument and that is the sound that, you know, being lined up from top to bottom is what you want to hear. And that allows you the most flexibility to express yourself adequately and accurately. So, but English is very tough because, you know, I can't sing it like I speak it. And that's the hard part, you know? Yeah.
Right. How did your family and your friends react to your success and the fact you are an international operatic star?
You know, it's really weird. I have lots of teammates that they just go, what the heck happened? Like, they, you know, they find it really cool. They find it really, they love to bring their spouses and significant others, like, wait till you see this. No, my boy played football with me, but no, and there's always this element of disbelief for the people that they bring, and they go, that's your, so they love it. I think the most challenging part was when I was starting out, and everyone was so supportive. Everyone was more supportive of it than me. I was the one person that said, nah, I just need to play it safe. I should just stay in corporate America and keep my job. And they're like, why do that? You can always come back to this. So that was the support part of it, but also just the surprise element that, you know, I've made it to the point where I've sung at every major opera house in America. I've sung at a lot of major opera houses in Europe. I've sung at just about every major orchestra. And I think they're just fascinated and happy that, you know, this guy took a chance and did something different and he was successful. And I attribute it to that school that you see behind me, that football mentality, being an athlete, you know, focus, discipline, intestinal fortitude, stick-to-itness, as I like to say, assiduousness, you know, the desire to just stick to something and be the best you can at it and be the best. If I'm going to be the best that I can at it, I have to work really hard at it. And I think that so far, I'm not disappointed in any aspect of my career so far. So I'm very blessed in that regard. So.
Well, we are all very, very proud of who you are as an artist and as a human being. And you are an amazing ambassador for the opera world. And let's hope we get out of this pandemic.
Yes.
Let's hope the situation in this country gets better. And I think you're right. I mean, out of these very disturbing times, probably something good can start. And that starts with a conversation. That starts with honesty. You are an inspiration to all of us. We love you, and I can't wait to be in the pit with you on stage and hearing that beautiful sound and that beautiful soul emanating to the whole world. Thank you.
I look forward to it too, Maestro. Thank you so much for this time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Ciao.